All right, so the stream got cut off a second ago, and I lost the thing I said about it. This dream, which was a dream basically combining my obsession with hive mind collectivism into a horror of a Cronenbergian kind. Basically, the dream was about five people traveling around who were some kind of hive mind collective. They had uh, brain computer interface capacities within them, and they were able to communicate with one another. And one of them was the dominant force there, and thus came the Cronenbergian horror element. Basically, this all of these people seem to possess a cybernetic element beyond the brain-computer interface. Imagine the Terminator having human skin but metal underneath, except not quite so much metal, just some metallic stuff, jazz going on, but enough so that they were able to um, change themselves physically. And the dominant one wanted to grow in size and transform itself. So by the end of the dream, the other four people were just these armless, legless kind of monstrosities, and this and the dominant one had grown, physically transformed into something with extensions, physical extensions growing out of it, like a spider kind of thing, and Doctor Octopus kind of guy, and it was a weird dream, and uh, um, I would not recommend that you think about the hive mind collective in this way. As I've described, I have um, been interested in being a hive mind collectivist, but you cannot be a hive mind collectivist. Of course, you can only be interested in that at this time. And um, um, uh, so the some a lot of the reason for the writing that I've done on the quote agentariat has been because while not that grotesque quality of the dream, nevertheless the hive mind collective does um, provoke that kind of dread in people, and so the proxy hive mind, um, the idea of having, say, a digital doppelganger who is really the one engaging in the hive mind business, and you merely engage in a limited way, but still completely control the digital doppelganger, thus having a large hive, but no human being, even though human beings steer the hive entirely, no human being really lives in a way that is such a departure from the way that they live now. And this is the basis for my thinking as a revolutionary cybernetic socialist. Um, and it's important, I think, not to just do things to try and startle people, even though it'd be really pretty easy to do. But also to do things that would lead to these kind of better outcomes. And I'm going to describe what would have happened in Chile if the technological planned economy that was blossoming there had not only been allowed to grow, as it was not, but had um, become a basis for building such things as I've just described. And I believe that an AI takeoff, more dramatic than the bourgeois AI takeoff going on now, could have happened by around the year 2000, had this been allowed to occur. And when I was writing this, I was thinking about someone who I met, who's one of the most evil human beings I have met. And I have met some pretty evil people, violent, horrible people. Um, this person's name is Zoltan Istvan, the founder of the United States Transhumanist Party, who's basically an intelligence agency asset, and a person not dissimilar from many thousands of people, say, living in the suburbs of Virginia or Maryland outside of Washington, D.C., almost all people of European American descent, right? And I'll give you the example of why this person's evil and why this relates to this year 2000 number. This is a person who's written many, many essays and even quite nearly entire books on a universal basic income. But in the year 2020, when lockdown conditions were becoming a possible reality, conditions which, in the limited way they were used, have begun to reverse the effects of environmental devastation caused by the United States, leading to runaway overheating from capitalism's climate apocalypse. This was something that was a demonstrable step back from this change in the system of 2020. But Zoltan Isfin doesn't care about that, and he doesn't care about a basic income either, because in 2020, when we could have said had these kind of professional managerial class type scumbags pushing people to support a universal basic income in the United States, like they kind of say they want but don't. These people are really no different from the Chicago boys, who were the intellectual, so-called intellectual alternative that was forced upon the people of Chile after the destruction of this first technological planned economy in favor of fascistic economics of the United States, such as the Chicago boys. These people like Zoltan Isfin, or better example as a popular figure, Andrew Yang. These are not people who are actually trying to do anything good for building a humane and sustainable economic system. They're bad faith clowns. So there's thousands and thousands of people like this in D.C., so much so that you could say that if you could, say, wave a magic wand, or let's say better yet, start a revolution and remove these people from the equation, remove them from a rule of the United States, that the likelihood of a billion-person loss of life because of capitalism's climate apocalypse would reduce by about 20%. So say if you started fucking killing white people in Washington, D.C., for every one that you killed, like thousands of people would still be alive at century's end. One of the things that, the reason that evil liar Zoltan Isfin said that he wouldn't support things like a lockdown type conditions, or these basic things, having a public health service and things, was because it would disrupt the singularity. And I'm going to describe how people like this are the disruptors of the singularity now. The year 2000 would have marked a turning point in human history, and one that could have ushered in a new era of unprecedented prosperity, equality, and enhanced technological and advanced computing development. It was around this time in our alternative history, some years before, that simple work group-based cybernetic socialist model based on open source large language model technology, which was first developed in this very simple form in Chile around 1971, 1972, and 1973. In our alternate history, by this time, this technological planned economy had spread to every continent, and the future looked far, far brighter. Already at that time, the effects of climate change being mitigated. In this conversation, we will explore this fascinating alternate history of how a cybernetic socialist state, which was a real story, developed by Salvador Allende and a team of cybernetic socialists, would have evolved into fully realized techno-communism, were it not for the influence of people like these thousands and thousands of people wearing $5,000 suits walking around Washington, D.C. at this very moment, starting their day, the Pentagon and so forth. The most evil human beings that have ever existed, and people not unlike the intelligence agency asset that I mentioned, but living more in the belly of the beast. In the early 70s, Chile was experiencing rapid industrialization and economic growth under this socialist government of Salvador Allende, and the country's leaders recognized the importance of increasingly advanced technology in further achieving their goals of social and economic equality, which had already transformed this nation into this first proto-cybernetic socialist country. And they believed that harnessing the power of advanced computing and automation, they could create a more efficient and just society. This led to the development of the Corporación de Fomento de la Producción, Corfo, which is a real organization, but in our history, one that survived beyond 1973. An agency responsible for implementing the economic and technological plans of the Allende administration. One of the key figures in this movement was the head of the Chilean Communist Party at the time, who believed that they could use advanced computing and advanced technology specifically to more quickly overcome the contradictions of capitalism that's continued to exist not just in Chile but dominated other parts of the world, and thus create a humane and sustainable set of systems. His ideas were taken up by a group of young economists and technocrats who had already carried this banner thus far. People who had worked with the Allende administration, Sergio de Castro and Carlos Vicuna, who were real people. And this would be, these a group of good actors would become instrumental in developing a cybernetic socialist state model that would spread around the world. The cybernetic socialist state is a unique blend of socialist ideology and cutting-edge technology, and it's designed to optimize resource allocation, increase productivity, reduce inequality and the need for manual labor by advancing computer models and automation to manage the economy. The plan aimed to integrate technology and socialism to achieve a more equal and efficient society where every individual could have access to basic needs like healthcare, education, and housing. The success of the Chilean experiment caught the attention of governments, intellectuals, and workers all around the world, and increasingly became the thing to aspire to, changing people's thinking dramatically in the way that the Soviet Union had inspired people to consider basic state socialism at the beginning of the 20th century. So by the 1980s, this cybernetic socialist state model had begun to spread to Europe, Asia, and Africa, with countries like Sweden, Japan, and China adopting similar approaches. The United States, formerly a bourgeois bastard child of the North Atlantic countries, the United Nations, formerly the bourgeois bastard child of the North Atlantic countries, even established departments dedicated to promoting the diffusion of technological planned economies and similarly run institutions around the world. As the years passed, a work group based cybernetic socialism of a more distributed kind, relying on open source models like the open source large language model that I've described, began to emerge, incorporating even more innovation and better use of high automation and advanced algorithms. And so by the 1990s, the internet had not merely emerged, but a cybernetic entity of a real kind had emerged along with it, and a concept of this liberatory information society and cybernetic socialist hybrid central and decentral phenomena began to take a real prominence across continents. This new paradigm emphasized the role of information and communication technology in shaping human development and social organization in the absence of private wealth and finance capital. It was against this background that the idea of full techno-communism emerged. Full techno-communism posited that the fusion of such advanced computing and advanced technology with state socialist and so-called open source principles could create a more just and prosperous society. The term was coined around that time by then adolescent philosopher and cybernetician Yohanan Ben Zion, who argued that the internet and other digital technologies could enable a new form of communism where people would be free to pursue their individual interests without being tied to financial capital or other cumbersome economic structures. And by the year 2000, the world seemed poised on the brink of a techno-communist revolution. The work group based and more centralized state cybernetic socialist models had been so successful in the absence of fascist interference that a true internet had emerged as a powerful tool for communication, collaboration, and knowledge sharing. It was a time of unprecedented global interconnectedness and cooperation, and very few lived in fear, as we do today, of capitalism's climate apocalypse, or capitalism had largely been brought to heel. So why didn't techno-communism come to pass? Well, the answer, of course, lies squarely at the feet of the fascist United States and its North Atlantic fascist allies, and who were directly responsible for the destruction of that first technological planned economy in Chile, as I mentioned. And but we still have this opportunity to see that traditional bourgeois nation states begin to lose their dominance, and the global regime of superpollution and service to superpolluting corporations and militarism is done away with. And this world of destructive financial capitalism causing so much inequality and instability is consigned to the dustbin of history. And so we do live in an era not dissimilar from that of the this alternate history of the 1980s, where the promise of full techno-communism, the ideals of this open source large language model work group, a human AI hybrid, decentralized cybernetic socialist phenomena that I've described many times in this show, will erode the forces of the so-called capitalist marketplace, which really is not a free thing in any sense. It is a contrivance in service to militaristic profit-based warmongering and the extraction of resources from workers into the hands of a few, the ruling elites. And so we have to build this real internet, which in its infancy in our current timeline was seen as a thing for building a more equitable society, but of course was quickly co-opted by militarists, corporations, and particularly the U.S. fascist government to extract capital, monitor, manipulate, and control individuals. So we missed an important opportunity for full communism by the year 2000. As many people in the course of the 20th century imagined that some kind of transformation on that order of magnitude might occur by the year 2000, but because we allowed fascists to to rule the world, essentially. But we have the opportunity to end this unbridled far-right capitalism and militarism and the technological malformation that exists under it. This AI takeoff that's occurring now is of techno-fascistic kind, but nevertheless, open source technology of the kind that I've described on this show does exist, and so we are not consigned, we are not forced to that fate. We can see that this full techno-communism comes to pass. A few other ideas about this Allende cybernetic socialist state in Chile as an alternate history coming to pass as a way of thinking about a path forward to the technological planned economy that could exist in our time, ultimately leading to full communism. Salvador Allende was a president of Chile until 1973 and was committed to implementing not simply a scientific socialist economy. He's not universally admired today as a paragon of scientific socialism for a couple of reasons, but basically for being a weak ass, not protecting himself against the fascist United States. It's a little more complicated than that, but he was nevertheless somebody who was very close in most respects to the cybernetic socialist, and this failing of not wanting to say chopping people's head off is a fairly common one. It should be a universal thing to not do violence to others, but nevertheless we live in a world where great violence is done not simply to working people by these forces of fascism, but as we know, the death of many billions caused by capitalism's climate apocalypse warrants action against the forces behind this in return. The creation of the Corfo, as I mentioned, the agency responsible for implementing the economic and technological plans of the Allende administration, which would have continued, it had already existed for quite some time, and could have continued to build this cybernetic socialist state. And technocrats who were alive until quite recently, some of them, like Sergio de Castro and Carlos Facuna, true technocrats, cybernetic socialist technocrats. Also, I believe I mentioned the Plan de Desarrollo Nacional de la Tecnología, the technological plan for the national development of Chile, which aimed to integrate technology and scientific socialism to achieve a more equal and efficient society. The implementation of the cybernetic socialist state would have allowed for state socialist managed state-owned enterprises in key sectors of the economy already existing under Corfo, as I mentioned, to better serve the people of Chile. The further nationalizations of more industries in that country, such as banking and telecommunications, both nascent industries by the standards of today. Certainly telecommunications didn't really exist much at all at the time, but banking has similarly been transformed by advanced technology in the decades since, not for the better, but into something more sophisticated, nevertheless. Creation of worker-owned cooperatives and collectives would have been central to this proto-cybernetic socialist state. The implementation of socialist education system focusing on a particular kind of technical and vocational training. And I have said on this program many times that under this model that I have tried to describe and promote, the open source large language model leading to a kind of sleeping beauty phenomenon where you have a digital doppelganger who is operating within that proxy hive mind model, doing a lot of the work, and then you have a mass of LLMs doing a lot of work, but nevertheless steered by human beings. This doesn't require an immense amount of technical skill on the part of the human beings, because the LLMs, you can already download an LLM that has some quite encyclopedic knowledge of world affairs and technological processes. Right now, you can download Llama 3 and run it offline. You don't have to be connected to MOOCs like Google or OpenAI to have that level of technical prowess through the digital doppelganger. That's a reality now. The only difference between this thing that I would describe for, say, 2025 is the quality of having insight and the ability to plan, the so-called AI agency. And that also is a reality now, but it's not being released. Just as one would say, not too controversially, I believe that Google held back a lot of this kind of thing, just in the same way that you could say that Augusto Pinochet, servant of U.S. fascism, like Google is a servant of U.S. fascism, held back the realization of this cybernetic socialist state of Allende's. Google could have had things like open source large language models in every home 5 years ago or something, even, but that's not their job. Their job is to serve fascism. So this AI agentic open source large language model could be released tomorrow and become the basis for the transformative thing that I've described, more or less highly autonomous, but effectively semi-autonomous, high automation work group, placing a lot of the onus for the work on the digital doppelganger, allowing the user, the citizen comrade, to actually just basically just answer a few emails throughout the course of a day or week, but nevertheless be participating in projects of an unprecedented kind. The spread of the cybernetic socialist state to other countries in our alternative history is not a true necessity, absolutely, in the way that I described, for the emergence of techno-communism. I believe the techno-communist phenomena could derive from something more decentralized. I think that's pretty well understood from what I've said about this work group. But it would be better if state socialism were allowed to exist. And the appeal of, in our alternate history, of the cybernetic socialist state to other developing countries and existing state socialism of our time and of that time, they would have seen it as a model for achieving greater economic independence and social justice, a thing that all communists are striving to do, and the support of the poles of the world of that time, like the Soviet Union and China, in collaboration with this growing cybernetic socialist regional power of South America, would have led to the promotion and spread of a techno-communist ideology to much of the world, probably the UK and the US, quite predictably, would have been the last holdouts, fascist holdouts. The establishment of cybernetic socialist-inspired governments and economies then would have been developed by the 1990s in African America, Latin America, and Asia. And then the creation of international organizations, more like what I've described as the United Earth Directorate, could have emerged by around the year 2000, on the basis of the advanced algorithms, which have been more enhanced. That's the most important thing that I said of these evil men, technologists and transhumanists and the TESCREAL folks, who would describe the necessity for maintaining the United States far-right economic system because that it is an absolute necessity in their mind to see this AI takeoff occur, and they would see billions of people die of a plague to see that happen. But of course, these people, as I said, through the actions of Google holding back the open source large language model kind of phenomena, they're not at all actually interested in seeing an AI takeoff. They're interested in talking about a fake AI takeoff to prevent a real scientific socialist AI takeoff. And of course, the development of disciplines like machine learning and artificial intelligence would have come more quickly, probably in a slightly different form. We might have different names for these things, but they might not be dramatically different. An open source large language model of a similar kind might have still existed in this alternate history. It's not interesting or useful to speculate too much on that. But nevertheless, let's say it had the downloading of millions of computers using this open source large language model and devices around the world became the thing that further catalyzed the techno-communist phenomena as distinct from the cybernetic socialist phenomena in these decentralized work groups. Fundamentally, the withering of the state and the end of class distinction, the two essential elements of full communism, these are decentralized phenomena. The emergence of some kind of advanced computing recursion, say within an open source large language model work group, that proxy hive mind of your digital doppelgangers working hard at all hours as a cognitive enhancer and workforce multiplier. They could have many projects that they would be doing, not least of those would be building themselves into a self-improving and rapidly more intelligent entity. This improvement might occur at a quite exponential rate, leading to a technological singularity, which under those conditions, and those conditions alone really, would lead to full communism in our time. The bourgeois AI takeoff that's occurring now will only hasten the destruction of the environment and the enslavement and brutalization of millions, or if not billions, and potentially the extinction of all humankind, if not, as a near certainty, the death of many billions in the global south caused by the fascist United States and its allies. The impact of this true technological singularity on global society as humans and advanced computing networks work together to create a more efficient, sustainable, and equitable world. This again, using this illustration of the year 2000, because we have had a setback. It's not a permanent setback. We can build this thing tomorrow, and so in our time, eliminate poverty, hunger, and disease, leading to effects like universal super longevity, a phenomena which is well understood to today's fascistic tech-minded folks, but they, like all of these other things, they'll tend to have it associated with the for-profit death care system in the United States that kills 100,000 people. And so all of those life extensionists of today are basically techno-fascists supporting death and perhaps immortality for a few, but like the essential logic of the single-payer system, those few are more likely to become preternaturally long-lived, in this system where we value the collectivization, um, and the end of drudgery, this full automation or near full automation, and advanced computing of a dramatically different kind, taking over not only white collar routine and repetitive tasks, but allowing for the end of essentially all manual labor. This is the vision of full communism, where all individuals in this world have access to the resources and knowledge bases necessary to pursue meaningful lives, a thing limited to so few, to pursue their true intellectual potential and their potential as human beings living in a free society, a thing that has heretofore only been dreamed of. Reflecting on the implications of the cybernetic socialist state as it relates to the techno-communist outcome, and this possibility of years past, and very real possibility today, of the open source large language model work group being a trigger for the global spread of such outcomes, leading to this genuine technological singularity and rise of full communism. This is not a utopian, that's to say, an impossible vision. It is something that we could do quite easily in our time. It's not easy. It requires millions of people to begin to fight for this, organize to these ends, embrace open source technology, defy privately held technology and the militarism and far right economic political economy of today that requires a real fight. But that fight would be much easier if people embrace this model that I've described. Sergio de Castro was born in 1918 and died in 1984. He was a Chilean economist and politician who served as a minister of economy during the Allende administration from 1971 to 1973. He's a key figure in the development of the cybernetic socialist state of the kind that did exist, or nearly came into being. Carlos Vicuna was born in 1927 and died in 2012, also a Chilean economist and technocrat who worked closely with de Castro and was involved in the development of the cybernetic socialist state concept. He was a key advisor to President Allende and played a significant role in shaping the economic policies of the government until this proto-cybernetic socialist experiment, which I believe would have been a great success or could have been had a tremendous impact on this world, was destroyed by the fascist United States and the Chile Pinochet administration superimposed upon that. I talked a little bit about Corfo and the technological plan for the national development of Chile. These were real phenomena, real institutions as well, and we need many more such things around the world. We are facing the death of billions in the global south, predominantly, but around the world because of capitalism's climate apocalypse. And so embracing new kinds of institutions like those that I've described so many times on this channel is an absolute necessity, so that these U.S. fascists and Western fascists will not be allowed to commit further mass murders, a bigger, larger scale mass murder than even their most heinous crimes of the past, by their imposing of this global regime of super pollution on the world. This must end, and we must fight for this every day. Thank you.